Hello there. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to come to my podium presentation today. So to begin, there are currently 1 million people living with multiple sclerosis in the United States. And multiple sclerosis, or MS, is a chronic disease that's characterized by inflammation and neurodegeneration in the central nervous system. Impaired mobility is a hallmark of MS, with up to 90% of those with MS reporting mobility limitations or impairments, which can be seen in the moving image on the top of the screen here as an individual with MS walks in their living room. So these deficits in mobility can be seen in two major subdomains of mobility. The first of which being postural control, which up to 80% of people with MS experience difficulties with, and gait, which those with gait impairments with MS, 70% reported as the most challenging aspect of the disease. In the current presentation, I'll be discussing how physical activity is related to these two commonly impaired variables in people with MS. And more specifically, this is the first work to our knowledge that aimed to identify how habitually performed physical activity duration in minutes per week, intensity using a rating of perceived exertion scale, and type, including resistance and/or plyometric training and yoga, were all associated with postural control and dynamic gait in this population. And we hypothesized that greater physical activity duration, intensity, and type, or at least the participation in alternative types, would be associated with superior postural control and dynamic gait in people with MS and neurotypical controls. In this study, we had 24 people with MS and 21 neurotypical controls that were well matched for sex, age, height, mass, and BMI. These participants all completed a protocol, first consisting of self-report physical activity questionnaires where we obtained information regarding their habitual physical activity duration, intensity, and type. And then participants completed postural control and dynamic gait assessments in which we utilized the Mini Balance Evaluation Systems test, or the Mini-BEST test for short. So the Mini-BEST test is a comprehensive test that assesses 3 domains of postural control, including anticipatory postural control, reactive postural control, and sensory orientation, as well as a 4th domain, which is dynamic gait. And throughout my presentation, as I refer to these subdomains, I'll be utilizing the color you see here on the slide and the image that's represented by that subdomain for your reference. So the Mini-BEST test is comprised of 14 items scored from 0 to 2 for a maximal score of 28. And it has a minimal clinically important difference of 4 points, which is indicative of a 4-point change or difference being clinically significant with this test. So to dive into our results, I'll first be discussing the associations between physical activity intensity and postural control and dynamic gait. And so to begin with our neurotypical participants, which are indicated by the dark green data points, these participants experienced or presented with significant associations between their habitual physical activity intensity and their anticipatory postural control performance. Similarly, for people with multiple sclerosis, which is indicated with these orange data points, they had significant associations between physical activity intensity and reactive postural control performance, as well as sensory orientation performance as well. And so therefore, we can conclude that there were small to moderate associations between physical activity intensity and better postural control in one domain in neurotypical controls and 2 in people with MS. Furthermore, in regards to dynamic gait, in people with MS, we found a significant association as well between physical activity intensity and dynamic gait performance. Again, with these associations being small to moderate, but yet significant. Lastly, this final figure displays the median scores, which is indicated by the thick line in the middle of these boxes, across participant groups who did versus did not perform each type of activity. So to begin, people with multiple sclerosis who reported resistance and/or plyometric training had a median score of 3 points greater than those who did not report that activity. And similarly for yoga, participants who reported yoga participation had a 3-point median higher mini best test total score than those who did not. And I'd just like to remind us all of that MCID, or that minimal clinically important difference, of being 4 points, which is indicating that these participants nearly presented with clinically significantly greater postural control and dynamic gait scores. Another clinically meaningful threshold regarding this test was identified by Ross and colleagues in 2016, and that was a score of 22.5. And in people with MS, a score of that and below is indicative of fall risk. And as you can see here, those who participated in these given activities had a median score that fell above this fall risk threshold, whereas those who did not had a fall risk below, or had a median score below this fall risk threshold. I think it's also important to recognize that 6 of the 7 participants in our sample who fell had a mini best test total score of 23 and below. So just to conclude, to start, intensity and type were the only associated elements of physical activity to postural control and dynamic gait performance. And these results indicate a possible utility of physical activity, intensity, and type to improve mobility outcomes for people with MS and neurotypical adults. However, future research is needed to better understand these associations in a way that we can derive causation. So I'd just like to thank all the organizations and individuals on this slide, for which this study would not be possible without. And I'd like to thank you for your attention and hear any questions you may have. Thank you.